All right, thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. I'm the author of Love, Hope, Lyme, what family members, partners, and friends who love a chronic Lyme survivor need to know. And Kristen, I've given out over 5,000 copies of the PDF of that book for free. It's been available from day one for chronic Lyme survivors. Just reach out to me on social media and I'll send you a free copy of the PDF. The book itself is up on Amazon. You could find it there. I just want to let people know that we're going to be talking about Lyme disease today. This is not a replacement for medical care. If you're struggling with Lyme disease, tick-borne disease, and anything else, please seek proper medical care. If you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Go give us a 5-star review. We would love that. Give us a thumbs up if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment or a question. We would greatly appreciate that as well. So I'm very excited. My guest today is Kristen Harris, and she's the Education and Grants Manager at the Global Lyme Alliance. And Kristen, it's great to be talking to you because we're going to be talking about what I think is just an important topic. It's the whole concept of mentoring, and it's the whole concept of how Lyme survivors seek support from people who have gone on the path ahead of them. You know, it's interesting. One thing I discovered when I first published my book in 2020, actually, when I started doing the research prior to the book being published, was that there were thousands of Facebook pages, right, with people asking advice. And they were just people asking for advice. Has anyone tried this supplement? Has anyone done this continuation of their treatment journey? Has anyone gone to Germany for treatment, whatever it might be? You know, and it continues to this day. We're doing today's interview in June of 2025, and it hasn't abated. You know, people are still seeking answers. And we've spoken on previous shows, and I'll ask you why, but we've spoken on previous shows why that is. You know, there aren't too many mentors for people with broken ankles. You know, there aren't too many people, you know, looking for mentors with a toothache, but there are people who are struggling, of course, those who are listening with their Lyme journey. And what you're doing is so exceptional at the Global Lyme Alliance. All right, give us a little bit more of an introduction. And I know you're also a Lyme survivor, so feel free to share whatever it is you want about your Lyme journey. When did you start having symptoms? When were you diagnosed? And whatever you want to share about what your treatment protocol has been.
Yes, Fred, thank you so much for having me. Unfortunately, my journey is a very long one. For most of my lifetime, it's believed that the tick bite I received at 8 years old is what has made me sick for most of my life. I grew up in New York, Westchester County, New York, where I was bit by a tick at 8 years old, and at the time, my mom was very aware of the budding Lyme, going on in Lyme, Connecticut. So she fought for me and advocated to try and get me testing and treated early on. Unfortunately, back in the 90s, there was very little knowledge. So I was fortunate enough to get some antibiotics at the time,
Mm.
but not long enough to, prevent long-term, consequences. I didn't start experiencing symptoms until I was in high school. And at that time, it manifested in more neurological, learning issues. I started doing poorly in school and, joint pain, aches and pains and stuff that, a normal teenager doesn't experience, crushing fatigue, couldn't get out of bed kind of stuff. Fortunately, I was seeing a chiropractor for my aches and pains, and the chiropractor actually happens to have a family member who is a well-known Lyme literate doctor. And he said to me, "Did you ever think maybe you had Lyme? Have you found a tick? Do you have a rash?" And of course, everything, from when I was 8 years old, 10 years prior, wheels started turning. And later, saw this Lyme literate doctor and was diagnosed with Lyme and babesiosis, approximately 1998. And I did my first treatment protocol then, which did lead me to a very long period of remission from 2000 until about 2014, 15 is when little symptoms started to creep back. Unfortunately, it hit me really hard. And by 2017, I was on disability, virtually bedridden, with, from neurological symptoms to chronic pain to fatigue to joint swelling, migraines, weird rashes, reactions to food, a lot of just odd things. And that brought me back on my Lyme journey again to where I was disabled from 2017 to 2020 and just have been going through the healing journey ever since. So
Wow.
it's a long, hard road for a lot of people. So unfortunately, I've been there firsthand.
Well, thanks for sharing. And what you're doing with the mentor program is it's helping obviously like tons of people. And uh, a lot of people I've spoken to over the last couple of years, I hate to say this, but not that there's a silver lining, but a lot of people, because there really isn't, but a lot of people have been able to use their experiences to give back and to provide value and to help thousands of people. For people who don't know, tell us what the Global Lyme Alliance, tell us about the Global Lyme Alliance. What exactly is it? What is its purpose? And then we'll talk about the mentor program specifically.
Absolutely. So, GLA's mission is to cure Lyme and other tick-borne diseases through funding innovative research, awareness, and empowering the patient voice. So, we, fund research projects going on to try and, make a change when it comes to diagnostics and treatments for Lyme and other tick-borne illnesses. But we also raise awareness and have these wonderful educational programs like our mentorship program to be able to provide that support to so many patients that are, stuck trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, there's so many great things that the Global Lyme Alliance does. I've had some of your people on past shows where they've talked about where the funding is going and how they're supporting a lot of the research, et cetera. So, why does a Lyme survivor need a mentor? And what exactly do they offer? I mean, I'm presuming that they're not doctors. They're probably Lyme survivors who, like you, have gone through a long journey. They've tried everything. They also have the co-infections. So there's expertise. I don't mean to be answering your question, but how much of it is mostly emotional support, and what exactly are the Lyme survivors looking for in a mentor?
Absolutely. So the program's meant to inspire people in the Lyme and tick-borne illness community, and it's more of an emotional support because, as you said, we're not doctors. We can't diagnose, treat anyone. But our, team of mentors are all people that were patients at one point or currently are suffering with Lyme, but they're in a place where they've had the experience, they've gone through their own journey and they have that personal expertise to be able to provide that emotional support because it is very hard as a patient or as a caregiver to try and navigate this illness. So in our mentorship program, it's not just for patients, it's also for caregivers and family members. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew that because being the primary support for patients is very, very difficult. And being able to connect with other spouses, parents, family members that are supporting someone struggling with the illness, it's a really great outlet for sharing emotions and helping those people find their way and, lighten the load because there's so many, spouses, friends, parents that are driving people to every doctor's appointment or, helping them navigate medications and all of the things that come along with this illness. So we're really there to provide that support and sharing resources. So although we can't give medical advice, we have, there's wonderful books like your book, or there's, other wonderful Lyme disease books, resources, websites, iLads, and different places where you can find information, care. So our mentors do that, just be able to share their experience and knowledge.
How much training goes in? So when someone raises their hand and says, "Hey, I want to be a mentor," is it a rigorous process to get approved to become a mentor?
It is a few step process, but obviously we want to vet the correct people and make sure people are, in a good headspace to be a mentor because, as listeners would probably know from their own experiences, it can be a very, heavy time to bring up an illness and to walk someone through it. So the first, we do an interview process. We also do a background check just to be sure, we're having quality candidates. And then there is also an orientation, going through, the terms and conditions and certain protocols to do when certain conversations pop up, or if any other guidance is needed. So it's a couple of steps, but we want to make sure we get the best individuals, and we try to make it as quick and easy for those who are willing to volunteer their time.
I'm just kind of curious, Kristen. Again, we're talking to Kristen Harris. She's the Education and Grants Director with the Global Lyme Alliance. You gave us a little bit of an insight into your Lyme journey, which began over 25 years ago. Why is this journey so difficult? Again, like I mentioned before, there's no mentor programs for anyone who broke an ankle. There's no toothache mentor programs. Why is the Lyme journey specifically? And again, a lot of people probably have some ideas, but just give us an overall picture on why this journey requires such a program.
Of course. Well, in my opinion, it's very difficult for Lyme patients because we are often misdiagnosed or medically gaslit or just not understood by medical professionals. Also, lack of education and inaccurate testing. So, sometimes people may go to their provider and explain all these symptoms, and it's so hard to actually diagnose them. So it can lead to people being misdiagnosed for a very long time, in pain, trying to figure out what's going on with them. And then when they finally get a diagnosis, it's not 1 2 3 and you're cured. It can often be a long process and a long treatment. So it's important to have a mentor or support for those individuals, someone that's been there. And I'll tell you, I speak to people all the time, even just in my interview process with them, sharing my story, people saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm talking to someone who knows what I've been through. And that is why this program is so important, because there are so many people out there that think it's only them, or I'm never going to get better. No one knows what's going on with me. And there really are so many people out there, such a broad community. The Lyme community has been so wonderful and helpful to so many people. So it's important that we have the support for them and let them know things that they can do, places they can seek treatment, or, finding resources to get the care they need.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I mean, just kind of curious, are there boundaries that you set up? I mean, it's a 7 by 24 thing, or you tell people you can only interact with your mentor for an hour per week? It is such a gift for someone to be able to do this, and for also, I presume, for the mentors as well. Everybody learns something every time they have an interaction. But again, they're not doctors, they're not getting free medical treatment. It's someone who's kind of helping them at various points.
Yes, absolutely. So we do have, boundaries and kind of guidelines that the mentors follow. So we do have a database that matches mentors and peers. So everyone fills out an application that asks a bunch of questions about their past, their diagnosis, co-infection symptoms, because we want our mentors to match with mentees that they have, things in common with. So the database handles that. And as far as communication, the mentor and mentee do set up their own schedule. We try to leave it a little bit flexible. Obviously, if boundaries are crossed and we have to, step in, we're happy to do so. But usually it's on a case by case basis, because sometimes we have peers that come in that are very, very sick, and they don't want an hour phone call, once a week. They just want to check in or shoot someone a text or say, I'm not feeling good, and have a quick interaction. So it's really the peer and the mentor can establish how they want to communicate, how frequently, and set up those parameters.
Two quick questions. Is there a cost to participate? And secondly, how long does the relationship continue for? I know when we were doing the prep for this call, you mentioned some people that you've been friends with for decades. And that's one thing that I've seen in the Lyme world that I didn't know before I started doing the research for Love Hope Lyme, was that there is a true community, and people have made, friends, human being friends that they do things with and vacation with and have dinners with and those kinds of things. And their families have gotten together. So again, how long does the relationship typically continue for?
Again, that's kind of a case by case basis. Sometimes, if someone gets all the help they need in the first
Mm.
few months, they find resources, they find a doctor, they feel like they're in a good place. They may say, you know what, I don't need to touch base all the time, and they can end their relationship there. We also have more sensitive cases where people are very unwell and they may take longer. So there's really no guidelines on how long. And this is a free service, completely free. So anyone listening that is seeking a mentor, please, check us out because it really has been such an invaluable resource for those. Because as we know, a lot of Lyme treatments are expensive and people may not have extra money to seek that kind of mentorship,
Mm.
but everything is no charge.
Just kind of curious, what have you personally learned from leading this program? What are some things, I like to ask, I also do a podcast for sales leaders, and I like to ask them, how have you grown over the last couple of years? So, what have you personally learned from leading this program that's made Kristen Harris a more complete leader, or more complete, individual?
Well, personally, I thought I knew a lot about Lyme because of my entire life, right? So I've been through the ebbs and flows of the illness, and I thought firsthand experience was really all you needed to know. But now, working in this space, seeing the amount of people that reach out daily is really eye-opening, very difficult to see. I feel like we have such a wonderful service that is available to patients, but obviously I hate seeing so many people coming in needing that support. So what I've learned in particular is that the need for support is greater than ever. Unfortunately, Lyme is not going away anytime soon, and people are still getting sick all around the world. And we really need more mentors, more support, the community to stick together as well, because as you said, you don't realize how many people in the community can really help you, and friendships and relationships established through this because we've all been there. And really just, putting resources together and being able to help support the community is wonderful. So definitely the need for support, mentorship, and guidance is needed more now than ever.
Yeah, it's such a valuable service. I mean, it's when I first started the research, I thought, okay, this is, we'll get this thing solved. Every day I see more people logging on to the various social media sites, asking the same questions, new questions too, but a lot of similar questions. And, as we say, you get Lyme because you're walking in a park, right? Or, you were walking in Central Park. I talk to people who, people think you got to be in New England or Martha's Vineyard or things like that. And as we know, there's Lyme all over the world and all across the United States. I've spoken to tons of people in all through Texas, California, the Ozark area, Missouri, who just wanted to have a nice vacation kayaking and unfortunately they were bitten by a tick. Just kind of curious. You mentioned that there's also some mentoring for family members. What is your advice for family members, partners, and friends of Lyme survivors?
I would say if you have a loved one that is a Lyme survivor, my advice would be patience, compassion, and even when it's hard to understand, really being that support for them, because so many patients go through, doctors not understanding or maybe misdiagnosis. So your internal support is very, very valuable. As I mentioned earlier, there's people that go through long treatments and, are in a really bad place, and they may need an actual helping hand to get to a doctor's appointment or, help arrange, medications, because sometimes people have 12 different medications to take 5 times a day. So it can become a lot, especially when someone is dealing with neurological problems or migraines, or they just, have brain fog and they're trying to juggle these tasks. So being there for them, not just emotionally, but physically, and, understanding how hard it can be, and just really be, it can be so isolating and debilitating. So someone being in your corner is very important.
All right. Once again, we talked today on the Love Hope Lyme podcast with Kristen Harris from the Global Lyme Alliance. Just want to remind people if they would like their PDF copy of Love Hope Lyme, feel free to reach out to me via any form of social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it might be, Instagram. Kristen, I don't always remember to go to Instagram, but I know a whole bunch of people have reached out via that as well. Again, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us a thumbs up, 5-star review. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Kristen, before I ask you for your final thought, again, you work at the Global Lyme Alliance. You guys are on the leading edge of what needs to happen in Lyme, in the Lyme world. I'm just kind of curious, what do you hope happens in the Lyme world in the coming year? Again, we're doing today's interview and towards the end of June 2025. And what are the one or two major challenges that you hope are addressed and hopefully further along the lines of being solved?
Absolutely. I would say the biggest challenges, I would say, is what the patients face. And that starts with accurate diagnostics, so people can get tested and treated early. Lots of diagnostics aren't accurate and may not catch an older infection or give, negative test results when someone actually does have a tick-borne illness. So we really need, additional, research and studies into diagnostics, treatments, and also increased funding. There is just so much work to be done. And unfortunately, Lyme has a lot less government funding than other diseases. And without that funding, a lot of the work can't be done. So it's, we need to understand these complex illnesses, and that starts with the science and the research. So hopefully, we will make a little progress and have better diagnostics. That way patients can get answers earlier, and then they don't have the longer complications that some people have.
All right. Well, Kristen, thanks again for the great work that you do and for touching thousands of people in this very challenging space, and for your, I mean, bravery and courage in going through just this disease and getting to a place where you're able to help thousands and give back. And I mean, I know it's your job, but it's I don't mean you're doing it, but you understand what I'm saying is really to provide some value into this world that it's just such as I tell people, it's a disease that no human being should have to endure. And the service that you're providing with the mentorship and the grants and the education is super critical. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to wind on today's show with?
Just if anybody's listening and they are seeking support, please visit our website, gla.org, and under the patient tab is where you'll find our patient resources. We have, our peer-to-peer program. We also have a tool to find a healthcare provider if people are seeking a doctor, and wonderful other resources on our website. So please check it out.
All right. Once again, my name is Fred Diamond. This is the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. I want to thank Kristen Harris from the Global Lyme Alliance for being on today's show.